These are 10 key takeaways from the book, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, one of the best investment books written in the last 20 years. And be sure to stay to the end because I'm going to share with you a chapter I wish Morgan had included in his book that he did not. So let's go for a ride in this golf cart and let's talk about it. Okay, takeaway number one. Takeaway number one is wealth is not what you see. Wealth is what you don't see. Right? Wealth is the money that you don't spend. So when you see somebody driving up in a Porsche or a Rolls Royce, that's not necessarily wealth. In fact, more often than not, that's bought with debt. Wealth is what you don't see. It's the money that's not spent. I think that's a very important lesson for all of us to learn, and that is, it's better to be rich than to look rich. So that's lesson number one. Lesson number two is money buys freedom. Money buys freedom in options. It's not stuff that money buys. That's not the most valuable thing you can buy with money. The most valuable thing you can get with money is your freedom. The freedom to do what you want, when you want, and with whomever you want. That is what money really buys us. So that's the second thing. Third point is there's a difference between the academic answer of what you should do versus the reality in your specific situation. A classic example of this is the academic answer for many of us. If you got your mortgage in the last 5 years, with the exception of the last 18 months, you're likely close to 3% or less on your fixed interest rate mortgage. And I can tell you, if you run the numbers on that, I don't know your specific situation. This isn't financial advice for you or anybody. This is just financial education. But if you have a fixed rate mortgage at 3%, for a lot of people, what that would say is, you know what, you probably should not pay off that mortgage. You should hold on to the mortgage because you can invest that money. You have access to cheap capital, and you can invest that money at a lower cost than what you're paying for it. But just because that's the academic answer, it doesn't mean that's the right answer for you. And that's really the difference. And again, that's why you want to work with somebody that's a fiduciary for you, somebody that can help you do planning, and somebody that has a lot of experience. And really from experience, what you're looking for is the wisdom. And with wisdom and with experience comes, yes, the numbers might say to do one thing, but based on who you are as a person, maybe you should do just the opposite. And I think the mortgage is a classic example. There's a lot of us that, we're going to sleep a lot better at night knowing that we've paid off our mortgage. So there's a difference between the academic answer and who you are as a person. Okay, the next thing is nothing is free. The stock market has volatility. Over time, it's highly likely that the stock market is going to outperform the money that you have in the bank. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know that. But just because it's going to outperform, it doesn't mean it does that for quote unquote free. And the fee that you pay being in the stock market, unfortunately, is uncertainty and the angst that can come with daily, weekly, monthly volatility. So the fee associated with being invested in the stock market is being able to put up with that volatility. And the best way to do that, again, I don't know your situation, work with somebody that does know your situation, but the best way to weather the volatility of the market and not blow out at the wrong time is to have your asset allocation right. What percent of your portfolios are in stocks and what percent of your portfolio is in bonds? Okay, number 5, it's important to know what game that you're playing. And what I mean by this is there tends to be 2 types of investors in the stock market. One is people that are really just interested in the stock market short term. And this is why we can see companies have valuations that are way out of whack. Companies that are trading for more than you and I can fathom and could justify, right? Classic example of that is the GameStop run-up that took place recently, where a bunch of people on the internet said, you know what, we're gonna buy GameStop because there's people that are betting the stock's going to zero. There's professionals, and the valuation of that company got insane. Particularly, GameStop has physical stores basically buying and selling game cartridges, right? Well, I think we all know eventually that industry is going to go the way of Blockbusters, right? And the Netflix effect, where now a lot of games are streaming only. So that company's got a lot of headwinds. Now, you could argue they've got some good real estate. But it really separated from the fundamentals. And the reason for that is there were some people that were playing a short-term game. They weren't looking at the valuation. The only thing they cared was, if I sell this position tomorrow or next week, is somebody likely going to pay more than I pay? That is not fundamental investing. But just because something's going up in price doesn't mean that you should jump in if you're playing the long-term investing route, which is what I think we all should do. If you look at a stock chart over 80 years, it tends to go from the lower left to the upper right. And over time, and when I say time, I mean 10, 15, 30 years plus. Companies tend to do things better, faster, cheaper, and eventually the market recognizes that and the valuations increase. So if you're competing and you're trying to justify a price based on short-term traders, you're playing a different game. So you just want to be careful that you know what game that you're playing. Okay, and related to that is room for error. You want to have enough money on the sidelines where if your investments take a dip, I mean, we're going right now, as I record this in 2023, a lot of people think the U.S. is going to enter a recession. And a lot of people think that will hurt the stock market. People might say, well, Azul, of course it's going to hurt the stock market, but my pushback would be, it might already be priced in. I don't know. But if the market continues to go down, you want to have room for error. You want to have extra cash on the side, an emergency fund. It feels very differently when your investments are down 30% and you have a job versus when your investments are down 30% and maybe you just lost the job because of the recession. So have room for error, have an emergency fund. Okay, point number 7 is really just pointing out the value of compounding. And I think the best way to illustrate that, Morgan Housel in his book gives the example of Warren Buffett, right? One of the richest people in the world. And Warren Buffett is worth about $90 billion right now. But when he was 59 years old, now as I record this, Warren Buffett is 92. When Warren was 59 years old, he was worth $3 billion. And if you look at the math on that, how much has Warren Buffett really added wealth to his accounts over, since 59? And, a lot of people would have retired if they were worth $3 billion at 59 years old, right? But Warren loves what he does, so it's great. He absolutely should keep working. But just look at the power of compounding. If since Warren was 59 years old, if all he had done, on his $3 billion of wealth, if he had gotten a 12% return on that, it basically means that it would have doubled every 6 years. So let's say Warren was 60, just to give me easy math, when he was worth $3 billion. Well, at 66, that would have been $6 billion. 72, it would have doubled again. 12 billion. 78, it would have doubled again. 24 billion. 84, it would have doubled again. 48 billion. And at 90 years old, 6 years later, it would have doubled again and been worth $96 billion. So you can see the power of compounding. If Warren had retired at 59 and put that money in the bank and gotten close to 0% interest rates, just to keep my math easy, he'd only have $3 billion. But because he started so early and because he stayed in the game and didn't need to touch his wealth, you can see it was just a 12% return that took him from $3 billion at 59 to 96, almost $100 billion, 96 billion. So it looks like Warren's actually doing a little bit, he's a little behind track. He should be worth closer to 100 billion at this point than 90 billion. Of course, I say that in jest, but it just shows the power of compounding. Okay, number 8, let's keep going. Number 8 is be a pilot. And there's a saying that Morgan mentions in his book that, being a pilot, people joke and say that it's hours of boredom. thousands of hours of boredom, surrounded by seconds of absolute terror, right? And why pilots get paid a nice salary is they're highly trained, they're highly educated, they're doing a valuable skill, but also they have the ability to keep calm when others around them would be losing their minds, right? Would be losing their calm. And they get that. It's not like they're born that way. I mean, some of them are. But, you know, they get that way because they're very well trained, right? There's simulator training that takes them through these situations so they're not surprised. But the idea of being able to keep your head when others around you are losing their head is a really powerful concept. And that's why Morgan brings this up. Remember, the name of his book is The Psychology of Money. And he talks about a lot of the behavioral aspects, things like this. Okay, and be sure to stay to the end. We've got 2 more of Morgan's pieces of advice, and then one that I wish he had included in his book that I'll give you at the end. Let's keep going. Number 9 is freedom. And we talked about this earlier. You know, money has the power to buy you freedom. And what is freedom? You know, Morgan defines it, and I agree with him. Morgan defines freedom as the ability to do what you want, when you want, with whomever you want. And I think that's the highest and best use for money. It also obviously provides us our necessities in life, right? Food, shelter, clothing, the ability to help our families reach their goals, to give them the foundations that they need to live a great life. Okay, and number 10, and I think this might be the most important item in Morgan's list, and that is, Morgan says, sorry, nobody cares. And I think this is really good advice, because the reality is a lot of us are trying to impress people that frankly nobody cares. You know, we're leasing cars that maybe we are more than what we should be spending on our budget. We're buying bigger houses. You know, I think a lot of people that have challenges saving, and this is not a judgment call, this is really just for education. But I think one of the biggest challenges with trying to hit savings goals is just, you know, when you're trying to impress other people, it's really hard to hit your savings goals. I mentioned in another video that, you know, the second largest expense for the average American is you know, their housing is their first expense. Their next expense is not food and house stuff. The next expense is their car. So the average American spends just under $2,000 a month on housing, and the average American spends just under $1,000 a month on transportation. Now, that's not just your car payment, that's your car payment, your car insurance, gasoline. But think about that. If you could cut back on that expense, and I think this is a place a lot of people could cut back on and it not feel sacrificial. Instead of driving a flashy new car every 4 or 5 years, maybe think about buying a used car and seeing if you can bring that $1,000 a month expense on transportation maybe down to $500 a month. I'd be surprised if my transportation expense is much. You can see what I'm driving here today, a golf cart. So it's not mine. We're actually at an Airbnb, and it came with a golf cart. So I'm driving around on the golf cart. I thought it would make a good film, a good video. But anyways, I think that's an area that we can start saving. And you know, the average American makes about $1,000 a week, so that's $52,000 a year. And if you can cut back on your car payment from $1,000, not car payment, transportation costs, from $1,000 to $500, you're saving an extra $6,000. And for people that are making $52,000 a year, $52,000, that's $52,000 is their base. Saving $6,000 a year is 12%, is helping them save 12%. What do I think people should save a year? You know, it's aspirational, but I think about tracking closer to 20% than 10%. And I think there's a couple key savings areas that you can do to get there, and a couple strategies. One is, if you're just starting off, if you've been living the college lifestyle, maybe when you start that first job, instead of going all the way up to what your current salary can afford in lifestyle, maybe just go halfway there and save the other half. And then for the rest of us, when we get raises, maybe we think about half of the raise is for our current self that we get to spend now, but the other half of the raise is for our future self and we work towards saving that money. It doesn't take too many raises to start moving the needle there. Okay, enough said on that. Getting on to the chapter that Morgan did not include in his book that I wish he did, and that really is a chapter on what really is risk. You know, we watch the nightly news. They tell us about the volatility in the stock market. You know, the market's up 1% today. The market's down 1% tomorrow. The market's down, 2022. You know, the market's down 18%. Is that really volatility? The daily, weekly, monthly, or even yearly volatility? You know, because over time, again, over like a 20-year arc, highly likely, no guarantees, my crystal ball is cracked. This is not investment nor financial advice. I do suggest that if you want to work with a professional, you Google a fee-only financial advisor. And as long as I'm doing these disclaimers, before I tell you what I think risk is, do me a favor, if you found this video helpful, hit the like button. It really does help the algorithm find other people that videos like this can help. And leave me a comment. I do read the comments. Okay, what do I think risk is, and how do I think most people should think about risk? I think risk is, what is the likelihood that I do not achieve my reasonable financial goals? That's really what risk is. So, you know, if you're 10 years away from retiring and you're saving up money and you've built a nest egg, you know, probably if you're 10 years away from retirement, at this point, what you earn on your accounts is probably going to outpace what you actually contribute to your account. So is it riskier for you to have that money in a bank account that's earning very little in interest rates, or is it riskier for you to have that money in the stock market? I would argue it's riskier for you to have that money in the bank because it's highly unlikely it's going to beat inflation. There's no guarantees. But if you don't have growth that's outpacing inflation, it's really hard to reach your financial goals. So that's it for today's video. Again, the top 10 takeaways from the book, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. It's an excellent book. In fact, I'll share with you here, I was thinking of writing a book on the behavioral aspects of investing and how to succeed as an investor. And spoiler alert, I'm not going to be writing that book. Because Morgan did such a great job. There's really not a need for that. I've got an idea for another book. I'll tell you what my idea for my book is. Let me know in the comments if you think it's a good idea in that. And that is kind of a compilation of many of these YouTube videos and really say, you know, is it time for you to retire? To talk about the aspects of, are people ready to retire? Are they getting close to being able to retire? What do you need to do? What are the hurdles that most people face, both financially, but then also the emotional hurdles? So that's a book that I think could be super interesting. Let me know in your comments if you think you'd enjoy reading a book like that. Okay? And until next time, I'm Azul, encouraging you to take full advantage of the youth of your senior years. Remember, if you're 60 years old, you likely only have, unfortunately, 1,000 weeks left of healthy, active time. Let's use our time wisely.